Hi, everyone. Welcome to this additional lectures about the European Union as international actors. In these additional lectures, we will discuss about case studies of Iran nuclear deal and artificial intelligence governance. Building on our previous discussions of the European Union as international actors, this lecture will explore the actorness of the EU through two concrete case studies. First one, its role in the negotiation and implementations of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Actions, or commonly known as Iran nuclear deal. And also the second one, its role on artificial intelligence governance. These cases highlight the complexities of EU actorness, particularly its ability to exercise influence in international diplomacy and technological governance, despite the constraint of its supranational and intergovernmental structures. A theoretical framework based on measuring EU actorness, as discussed earlier from Charlotte Brereton and John Vogler, proposed three key parameters to assess the actorness of the EU. The first one is opportunity, or how the external conditions that allow the EU to exert influence. The second one is presence, to what extent the EU feasibilities and recognitions in international affairs. And the third one is capability, which is the EU's ability to take actions which include economic power, diplomatic influence, and institutional cohesion. Karen Smith's analysis in the Brown Journal of World Affairs expand on this by highlighting two additional considerations, which are the complexity of EU decision-making due to its multi-layered governance structures, and the EU preference for multilateralism and norm-based diplomacy, which contrasts with power politics. By applying these criteria, we can evaluate the EU engagement in the Iran nuclear deal and also on AI governance. Let's go to our first case study. The case study of the EU's role in this JCPOA. First one, let's take a look from the opportunity. In the early 2000s, concern over Iran nuclear program led to escalating tensions between Iran and Western powers, particularly the United States. The EU showed an opportunity to play a mediating role in resolving the crisis through diplomacy rather than conflict. With the US maintaining a confrontational stance and Iran seeking legitimacy in the global politics, this gave EU position itself as a credible intermediary. That's from the opportunity. Now, let's move on from the presence. In this sense, we're discussing about the diplomatic engagement and institutional framework. The EU presence in negotiation was critical in shaping the JCPOA. The EU, represented by the High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, act as the coordinator of the P5+1, which include the US, UK, France, China, Russia, and Germany negotiation with Iran. The EU, in this sense, played several key roles. The first one as the facilitator of the negotiation. The EU officials mediated between conflicting parties. Second role is consensus builder. The EU helped align the interests of the diverse P5+1 group. And the third one is normative leader. The EU promote nuclear non-proliferations and diplomatic conflict resolution as global norms. The third one is capability. In this sense, we see the economic and normative power of EU. The EU actorness in this JCPOA was strengthened by its economic leverage and commitment to multilateralism. First, on the economic influence, the EU over Iran incentive, including trade agreements and financial assistance to encourage compliance with the deal. Second, in terms of legal and institutional framework, The EU utilized its legal mechanism to implement and monitor the deal. And the last one, soft power and normative leadership. The EU insistence on peaceful conflict resolution enhanced its reputation as normative power. However, these three main supporting points from EU as international actors also goes with challenge and limitations. What are they? Despite its success in brokering the deal, the EU faced significant challenge. The first one, its dependence on the US. The Trump administration withdrawal from the JCPOA in 2018, which weakening the EU effort. The second one also in the internal divisions. EU member states had differing views on Iran, making unified actions difficult. The third one is limited enforcement power. The EU lacked coercive mechanism to enforce the agreement unilaterally. The fourth one is recognition issues. The EU is not always perceived as dominant actors in compared to the US and China. So that's the first analysis from our case on Iran nuclear deal. And now we will move on to our second case, which is the role of EU in AI governance. On the first element of opportunities, regulating AI in a fragmented global landscape become the opportunity of EU. As AI technology rapidly evolves, different global actors, including the US and China, have pursued divergent approach to AI regulations. The EU saw an opportunity to position itself as a global leader in AI governance, particularly through its commitments to ethical AI and data protections. Several factors create this opportunity. The first one, growing concern over AI ethics, privacy, and bias. The absence of comprehensive AI regulations in other major economies. And also the last one, the EU prior success in shaping global norms through the general data protections regulations. And then the second part is institutional and legal leadership in AI regulations as the presence of EU. The EU has played a significant role in shaping global AI governance by introducing the EU AI Act, the first comprehensive legal framework for AI. These regulations aims to establish risk-based AI classifications, what is unacceptable, what is high risk, and what is low risk AI system. Second one, ensure transparency and accountability in AI development. And the last one, prevent AI misuse in areas such as facial recognition and social scoring. The EU's regulatory presence has set a precedent for AI governance globally, influencing discussions in the OECD, G7, and also the UN. Several countries and multinational corporations have aligned their AI policies with EU standards, reinforcing the Brussels effect, where EU regulations become de facto global standard. The third one is the EU's capability in leveraging economic and normative influence. The EU activeness in AI governance is underpinned by its regulatory and economic power. First, on the regulatory influence, the EU AI Act shapes how global firms develop AI to comply with EU laws. Second, on the market size, as the world's largest single market, the EU can enforce compliance by multinational corporations, which I think is also very important influence from EU to multinational corporations. And the last one, normative leadership. The EU promotes ethical AI as a global norms, contrasting with the US market-driven approach or China's state-driven model. But what are the challenges and limitations? First one, fragmentations among EU member states. Some member states prioritize innovations over regulations, which leading to internal tension. Second one is slow implementation. The regulatory process can be slow while AI technology has evolved rapidly. The third one is a global resistance. The US and China have pushed back against strengthened EU AI regulations, limiting their adoptions. And the fourth one is lack of AI infrastructure. The EU lags behind the US and China in AI development, limiting its ability to compete in AI innovations. Well, the case of the Iran nuclear deal and AI governance illustrate both the strength and weakness of the EU as international actors. First, in diplomatic mediation, the EU successfully facilitated the JCPOA, but struggled with enforcement due to external dependencies. In AI governance, the EU leveraged its regulatory power to shape global norms, yet it faced challenge in technological competitions. Karen Smith analysis underscore that EU actorness is distinctive rather than dominant, shaped by its legalistic, multilateral approach and economic power rather than military might. While this approach allows the EU to be influential norm entrepreneur, it also leaves it vulnerable to external shock and internal divisions. This case reinforced the idea that EU does not fit neatly into traditional state-centric model of actorness. Instead, its influence is rooted in economic leverage, governance structure, and its role as diplomatic and regulatory brokers, factors that differentiate it from the other global powers. In the next lecture, we will examine another dimensions of EU, which is its influence in the global trade and regulatory governance, often described as the Brussels effect. Thank you.